She the People inaugural Women Writers Prize shortlist has 6 books, 6 authors, 2 translators, and very musical titles. Founded by Shaili Chopra, prize mentor Shashi Deshpande has called the list excitingly eclectic. Painstakingly curated or carved from a long list of 12 highly hypnotic books. The jury consisted of G. Sampath, Preeti Gill, and Lakshmi Subodh. And the books are A Mirror Made of Rain by Nahid Firoz Patel, A Redneck Dream Bird by C.S. Lakshmi, translator G.J.V. Prasad, Sisterhood of Swans by Salma Carvalho, The Begum and the Dastan by Tarana Hussain Khan, What We Know About Her by Kripa Ji, Budhini by Sarah Joseph, translator Sangeeta Srinivasan. Sarah Joseph, you have written so many books, won so many awards, the most recent being the Odakural one in Kerala. How did Budhini happen? ഇങ്ങനെ ഒരു കഥ എഴുതാനത് എളുപ്പമല്ല. ഒരു തപസ് പോലെ തന്നെയാണ്. കുറെ വാസ്തവം, കുറച്ച് അന്ധവിശ്വാസം, പൊളിറ്റിക്സ്, സൊസൈറ്റി, പഴയത്, പുതിയത്. ഈ കഥ എങ്ങനെയാ നിങ്ങളെ തേടിയത്?
Can I speak in Malayalam?
Yes.
Okay. ബുദ്ധിനി ശരിക്കും ഞാനൊരു മീറ്റിങ്ങില് I was participating in a meeting about Athirapalli dam project. In that meeting, I was a speaker, and my friend Sivik Chandran, when he was speaking about this dams and these things, he told the story of Budhini, the girl, 15-year-old girl. ആ കഥ കേട്ടപ്പോൾ അത് ഭയങ്കര ഒരു ഹാർട്ട് ബ്രേക്കിംഗ് ആയിട്ട് എനിക്ക് തോന്നി. ശരിക്കും ഒരു 15 വയസ്സായ ഒരു പെൺകുട്ടി നമ്മുടെ വികസനത്തിന്റെ പേരില്, വികസന പദ്ധതികളുടെ പേരില് അനുഭവിക്കേണ്ടി വന്ന സംഗതികൾ, ഭയങ്കരമായ പ്രശ്നങ്ങൾ അതിൽ കൂടെ കടന്നുപോയത്. അപ്പോൾ എനിക്ക് തോന്നി ആ കാലഘട്ടം, ഇറ്റ് വാസ് ഇൻ 59, ആൻഡ് ജവഹർലാൽ നെഹ്റു ഡാമുകളെ നമ്മുടെ മഹാക്ഷേത്രങ്ങൾ എന്ന് വിളിച്ചു ആ സമയത്ത്. ഇനി നമ്മുടെ മഹാക്ഷേത്രങ്ങൾ നമ്മുടെ ഡാമുകളാണ് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു. പക്ഷെ അത് രാഷ്ട്ര നിർമ്മാണ പ്രക്രിയയുടെ ഭാഗമായിരുന്നു. അപ്പോൾ എനിക്ക് തോന്നി ബുദ്ധിനി ഒരു പൊട്ടിപ്പോയ മൺകട്ടയൊന്നുമല്ല രാഷ്ട്ര നിർമ്മാണത്തിന്റെ വേളയിൽ. രാഷ്ട്ര നിർമ്മാണം നടക്കുമ്പോൾ പൊട്ടിപ്പോയ ഒരു മൺകട്ട പോലെ നിസ്സാരമാക്കാവുന്ന ഒന്നല്ല ബുദ്ധിനിയുടെ കഥ. അത് റെപ്രസെന്റ് ചെയ്യുന്നത് വികസനത്തിന്റെ പേരിൽ പുറത്താക്കപ്പെട്ട ലാക്സ് ഓഫ് പീപ്പിളിനെയാണ്, പിന്നെ മുങ്ങിപ്പോയ കാടുകളെയാണ്, മുങ്ങിപ്പോയ ഗ്രാമങ്ങളെയാണ്, തൊഴിലില്ലാതെ അലയുന്ന ഒരുപാട് തലമുറകളെയാണ്. ഇപ്പോഴും അത് സംഭവിച്ചുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുകയാണ്. അപ്പോൾ അതിലൊരു സ്റ്റോറി ഉണ്ട്, ഹിസ്റ്ററി ഉണ്ട്, പൊളിറ്റിക്സ് ഉണ്ട്, എൻവയൺമെന്റൽ ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻസ് ഉണ്ട്, ഡെവലപ്മെന്റിനെ കുറിച്ചുള്ള ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻസ് ഉണ്ട്. അപ്പോൾ ഇതെല്ലാം ഉൾക്കൊള്ളുന്ന ഒരു തീമാണത്. I have done a lot of hard work behind it.
Yes.
I referred a lot of books, journals, and documentary films, and Sandal songs, Sandal plays. And at last I went to Budhini, went to see her. എഴുതി തുടങ്ങിയപ്പോൾ ബുദ്ധിനി മരിച്ചു എന്നായിരുന്നു എൻ്റെ വിചാരം. ബിക്കോസ് ചിത്ര പത്മനാഭൻ ഇന്ത്യൻ പിന്നെ ഹിന്ദുവിൽ എഴുതിയ ഒരു ലേഖനമാണ്. അതില് ബുദ്ധിനി മരിച്ചുപോയി എന്നാണ് കൊടുത്തിട്ടുണ്ടായിരുന്നത്. അപ്പൊ ആ വിശ്വാസത്തിലാണ് ഞാൻ നോവൽ എഴുതി തുടങ്ങിയതും ഞാൻ ജാർഖണ്ഡിലേക്ക് പോകുന്നതും. എന്നെ സംബന്ധിച്ചിടത്തോളം ബുദ്ധിനി ഈസ് ഡെഡ് ഇയേഴ്സ് ബിഫോർ. പക്ഷെ അവിടെ ചെന്നപ്പോഴാണ് ആക്സിഡന്റലി ഞാൻ മനസ്സിലാക്കുന്നത് ബുദ്ധിനി ജീവിച്ചിരിക്കുന്നത്. Then I went to her, met her, talked to her, and it was a great experience, unbelievable experience for me. ഒരുപാട് അതില് ശരിക്കും ഒരു 2 കൊല്ലം നല്ല പോലെ വർക്ക് ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ട്.
അത് ഞാൻ ചോദിക്കാൻ പോവായിരുന്നു, എത്ര ഒത്തിരി സമയം എടുത്തിട്ടുണ്ടാവും എഴുതാനായിട്ട്?
2 കൊല്ലം ഞാൻ ശരിക്കും വർക്ക് ചെയ്തിട്ടാണ് എഴുതിയത്.
സംഗീത അമ്മയുടെ കൂടെ ട്രാവൽ ചെയ്തു എന്ന് എനിക്ക് സൂചന കിട്ടിയിട്ടുണ്ട്. സംഗീതം കൂടെ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു. Sangeeta, you're a bilingual writer, and you've written in Malayalam, you've written in English fiction. So how was the experience of translation generally, and how was it to translate your own mother's work?
Yeah, as a translator, I always believe that I always wanted to carry forward the music or the rhythm of the language, the rhythm of the text. So working with my mother in the first place, it was it was like a privilege for me, because other translators, they mainly the search or their tools are mainly the Google, or the depend on dictionaries or all the other things that are available. But here, the difference was that as I was translating, being very close to her, we share the same house and we travel together to see Budhini, to see Jharkhand and the place. So that was like a privilege for me as a translator. As I told you earlier, to carry forward the music of another culture, the rhythm of another culture. This travel has helped me a lot, because when I went there, I had an opportunity to talk with the people and also see their culture or feel. Like, we shared their food and we shared their culture. We even danced with them. So all these things contributed, because Budhini as a book is like, it shifts from stanzas and paragraphs. The book suddenly from paragraphs, it goes to some flash poems. So these flash poems basically, it represents the culture of the people. If you don't have any idea, any clue to the culture of the Santal people, it would not be easy for you to carry that culture, to your language. So this travel has helped me a lot, which I consider as a very special privilege as a translator. And again, about the other works, in English, you are the one who initiated me into this world of translation. You are the one who first time, I don't know if you remember, you asked me to translate a story of my mom years back. And that time I really had no idea about this. Yes. But this translation was really, I really enjoyed doing translation, and I had translated my own novel in English. Penguin published that, and in Malayalam, I had translated Elena Ferrante's Days of Abandonment. And also, I just finished translating, and the book is about to come, I Love Dick by Chris Kraus. And now I am doing a translation of Madame Pahari by Floppy. So my considering my translation experience, I consider at the present moment, I think Budhini is the great work, or the best work I have done as a translator so far.
So I think the mother-daughter chemistry has translated into a lot of literary, work. Would you both now read, the same paragraph from same reading from the book in Malayalam and then in English?
Okay.
This is a paragraph from 19th chapter. Budhini മല കയറി മരാങ് ബുറുവിനെ വിളിച്ചു കരഞ്ഞു. കരഞ്ഞുകൊണ്ട് അവൾ മലയിറങ്ങി. അപ്പോൾ നേരം പുലരുകയായിരുന്നു. മുന്നിൽ കാണുന്നത് കരിമലകളാണ്. ചുറ്റിലും കരിയാണ്, പൊടിയാണ്. അവൾ നിൽക്കുന്നത് ഒരു കൽക്കരിപ്പാടത്തിന്റെ അകത്താണ്. അവിടം വിജനമായിരുന്നു. ഇനി ഒരടി മുന്നോട്ട് വയ്ക്കാൻ ബുദ്ധിനിയെ കൊണ്ടാവില്ല. കാട് മുള്ളുകളും കുറ്റികളും കോലുകളും കൊണ്ട് അവളുടെ മുഖത്തും കഴുത്തിലും കൈകാലുകളിലും കോറി വരച്ചിരുന്നു. മുറിവുകളിൽ നിന്ന് രക്തം പൊടിഞ്ഞുകൊണ്ടിരുന്നു. അവശയായിരുന്നു ബുദ്ധിനി. 2 ചെറിയ കൽക്കരി കൂനകളുടെ ഇടയിൽ അവൾ തളർന്ന് കിടന്നു. കടുത്ത വെയിൽ മുഖത്തടിച്ചാണ് അവൾ ഉണരുന്നത്. 4-5 പേർ അവൾക്ക് ചുറ്റും നിൽക്കുന്നുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. ഓയ്, എണീക്കേ, നീ എങ്ങനെ ഇതിനകത്ത് കടന്നു? അവർ ചോദിച്ചു. നീ എവിടുന്ന് വന്നു? അവൾ മരാങ് ബുറുവിന്റെ മല ചൂണ്ടിക്കാട്ടി. തൊട്ടടുത്ത നിമിഷത്തിൽ രക്ഷയുടെ സംഗീതം പോലെ ബുദ്ധിനി മധുരമായൊരു നാദം കേട്ടു. സൈക്കിൾ ബെല്ലടിച്ചുകൊണ്ട് അയാൾ കടന്നു വന്നു. നോക്ക് ദത്താജി, ഈ പെൺകുട്ടി, ഇവൾ മലയിറങ്ങി വന്നതാണെന്ന് പറയുന്നു. സൈക്കിൾ ഒരു മരത്തിന്മേൽ ചാരി വെച്ച് അയാൾ അടുത്തു വന്നു. വരൂ, അയാൾ കൈ നീട്ടി. പിന്നീട് മരിക്കുവോളം അയാൾ ആ കൈ വേർപ്പെടുത്തിയില്ല. കൽക്കരി ഖനിയുടെ പരിസരത്തുള്ള ഒരു ചായക്കടയിലേക്ക് അയാൾ അവളെ കൂട്ടിക്കൊണ്ടുപോയി. അവൾ ഭക്ഷണം കഴിക്കുന്നു നോക്കി അയാൾ ഇരുന്നു. അഴുക്കിന്റെയും ദുർഗന്ധത്തിന്റെയും ഒരു ചുമടായിരുന്നു അവൾ. അവൾക്ക് വിശപ്പും ആർത്തിയും ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു. അവളുടെ കണ്ണിൽ നിന്നും കണ്ണുനീർ കുതിച്ചു ചാടിയിരുന്നു. കരിപുരണ്ട കവിളിലൂടെ അത് 2 ചാലുകളായി താഴേക്ക് ഒഴുകിക്കൊണ്ടിരുന്നു. പണ്ഡിറ്റ് ജവഹർലാൽ നെഹ്റുവിന്റെ ഭാര്യ. അയാൾ നടുവേർപ്പെട്ടു.
Budhini climbed up the hills, crying aloud, calling out to Marang Guru. She made her way ahead. Under the slowly rising sun, she saw unending rows of black mountains in front of her, coal everywhere. To her surprise, she found herself standing inside a coal field, all alone with no one close by. She could not walk a step further. Forest with its thorns, stubs of stalks and boughs had scratched her face, neck, and limbs. Blood continued to seep out of the cuts. Budhini felt exhausted, fatigued. She lay down between 2 large mounds of coals. She woke up only when the warm sun hit her face. She saw 4 or 5 men standing around her. "Oye, get up. How did you come inside?" the men asked her. "Where are you from?" She pointed towards the hills of Marang Buru. The next second, she heard a melodious voice like the music of salvation. He came ringing his bicycle bell. "Look at her, Dataji. She says she climbed down the mountains." Leaving his bicycle leaning against a tree, Datta came nearer. "Come." He extended his hand and held her hand in his. After that, he didn't withdraw it until the day he died. He walked her to a tea shop near the coal mine, where he sat beside her and watched her eat. She was a hungry, gluttonous load of dirt and stench. As she ate, tears rushed out of her eyes and ran down her coal-smudged cheeks in 2 furrows. "The wife of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru," he sighed.
Thank you so much. Tarana Hussain Khan, congrats on making this shortlist. As you know, this is an inaugural prize for women writers of fiction. And the long list was such that it was truly Hero Me Hira Tarashna. And where were you and what were you doing when you knew you made this shortlist?
Thank you so much for your congratulatory note. And I was really amazed to be on the long list, to be very honest, because it was an amazing long list. And for a new writer to be recognized is really surreal, I should say. But even more surreal was being on the short list. And since you asked where I was at that time, you see, my mother suddenly decided that she needed to get her cataract operated secretly without telling me. So I was just rushing to make it on time and from Delhi to Aligarh, where she stays. And right in the middle of this journey, very tense kind of a journey, I get this message. And of course, I was beyond thrilled.
So it was a surreal moment for a writer of surreal book.
Yes.
You've written about this princely state of Sherpur and the politics among women who belong to one man. Okay, so this relationship between the Nawab and Firoza, is it a love-hate thing?
Yes, you see, we always tend to look at historical happenings from a modern lens. So we cannot understand that there used to be a harem and maybe women were anyway attuned to the idea of sharing their man. Not always, but in a harem they were. As far as the relationship between the Nawab Shams and Firoza Begum, it was a love-hate relationship. You see, the way Firoza was, she was a very, very strong personality, and that is what attracted me to her story. So it was no way that she would go on through this relationship, even though she was restrained in the harem. I am sure that if she did not have that love from the Nawab, she won't have stayed back. And it was known that the Nawab was really devoted to her, at least initially. And maybe at some point of time, Firoza got over her initial hatred, or she was drawn into the glittering life of the harem. And she kind of negotiated it the best that she could, and with utmost dignity. And that's how her character comes out in the novel.
Tarana, you're a food historian and writer, and you're used to doing your research for, whatever you're writing. But this particular book must have demanded of you a very uphill road, so to speak, when it comes to finding out and keeping all your notes ready. Your homework must have been like quite a lot.
Yes, that's correct, Shiny, because you see, when you write historical fiction, you have to be very particular about the events, at least. And what I wanted to show also, that certain women are alive in the oral histories of the place, but they fall off the pages of written history. So what I found about Firoza Begum was there in the written histories of the place, and so it is based on real personalities and real events. But I did not know a lot about her, so it actually took me to a very long journey. I did not know the condition. I was talking to her family members, and I was talking to a lot of people who knew or had heard about her. You see, it is all oral history. At the same time, I was looking into the manuscripts for any clues about her life. And then the question was, how did she die? I went to the archives at Allahabad, and I looked through personal letters to find some clues, where I did get some clues. Then I went to a sanatorium in the hills. I don't want to spoil the ending, but I had to go over there and delve into the records, or whatever. They didn't have much records over there, but the basic idea of that sanatorium was that it was given by the Nawab to the sanatorium people, because his Begum stayed there, you see. So I came to all of this, the whole story of Firoza Begum, through a lot of research. And more than that, it was the whole atmosphere of the time. You see, this was the time that we had only heard about this time. So how did the people live? Where was the harem situated? How did people move from one place to another? How were the women restrained? What was the hierarchy? The whole thing required a lot of study of the culture as well as history of a place before I could really sit down and write the story. You see, so yes, a lot of work. It took me 4 years to write this book.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how long it took. 4 years seems to me like quite a long time, but
yes.
Yeah, but the book shows all the research and the detailed work that you have put into the writing.
Thank you.
There is a parallel story here which fuses the past with the present. So how different is Amira's world from Firoza's at the end of the day?
Yes, so the parallel story is of the great-granddaughter of Firoza Begum, who lives in present era. It was important for me to have this relevance of history, because I always felt that whatever happened in the past has some color to the present. So Amira's story talks about this small town girl who is the great-granddaughter, and how her life has changed from that time. So though her great-grandmother was restricted in the harem, she didn't have so much freedom. Amira goes to the school, right? But her fees is not paid by her father because of certain financial reasons. Secondly, a girl child's education is not such a huge priority. And we're talking about small town India today. It was the core of the story might be Firoza Begum, but the outer shell had to be Amira. It had to, because I was a teacher in a small town, and I know that how the girl child struggles through all these things and how much of stresses she carries with her. when she comes to school. Like fees is something that you would expect your parents to do, right? Especially when you are in class 11 or 12. But no, that stress and not being allowed to sit for the examination. So in a way, she also gets trapped in her house. Where would she go? She has the freedom. She just goes to the school or comes home, or maybe to a friend's place, because even her boundaries are fixed. So my question that I'm posing in the question is, in the book is that how has life changed for this small town girl or woman in today's era? Has it changed or has it not? Do we still live with the wailing? Are we still restricted? So that's why Amira's story came about. And my editors and my earlier readers were not convinced at all that why should you have Amira? It can just be a historical fiction. But Amira was very close to my heart. And I think I think I wrote the whole story twice or thrice to really meld into the thing and not be, apart from the story. And I hope it works, because a lot of people loved Amira angle of the story also.
Yeah, because it brings out the subtle comparisons and the subtle similarities of two different time frames.
Yes.
Tarana, I think you've conveyed quite some of the flavors of your book to all of us. Would you like to do a short reading for us?
Yes, sure. I'd love to do a short reading from my book. So this is the part where Firoza Begum, who has just gone to attend a Savni, which is a party at the Nawab's palace. She meets the Nawab, but she doesn't realize that it's the Nawab. Now she's attending a musical concert, and suddenly she realizes that the man she had insulted is actually the Nawab, and she's just terrified. So this is that part. There are stories, whispers, and then there is the truth. My story can draw from any of these or from all of these. That evening, Firoza Begum and her family entered through the ladies' entrance to the Darbar Hall of Benazir Palace. It led to a gallery that ran around the hall, shuttered with split bamboo curtains hanging on elaborate arches to shield the ladies from male eyes. A eunuch ushered them to their seats to the right of the royal throne, where they had a good view of the proceedings. The lights in the viewing gallery were low, such that only the silhouettes of the ladies, with a gleam of color, could be discerned by an attentive male eye. Firoza sat close to the frieze, peering at the hall, resplendent with glittering chandeliers, turbaned kings, bejeweled in their trousers and red coats, in their long jama kurtas, the noblemen and British officers in their smart trousers and red coats with badges and insignias. The chowkidar entered the hall and announced the arrival of the Nawab, reciting his high-sounding title, Amirul Umra, Farzande Ala, Daulate Inglisha. Everyone rose from their seats, and the British officers tucked their black hats under their arms. Munga Jan bent double with her salam. The Nawab entered with quick, impatient steps, his head surging ahead of his body, flanked by the British agent and the chief minister. By any standards, his frame was unimpressive and puny, but clothed in a cleverly padded, flesh-colored brocade sherwani. The ruby gleaming at his surpage and the pearl and diamond strings covering his pigeon chest created a dazzling aura of royalty. The Nawab turned to speak to his chief minister, the immaculately clipped mustaches quivering with his smile. It was an unremarkable face, imprinted with arrogance that befitted all the tales of despotism she had heard whispered about him. Bibi, it's him! Tabu clutched her hand and whispered. He knew her. She had insulted the Nawab and identified herself as the daughter of Miajan Khan.
Tarana, you took us right there to where it was happening. That was such a lovely reading, and thank you so much for talking to us. Bye.
Thank you, Shiny, for having me. And well, all the best and congratulations to all the shortlisted authors too.
Prasad, you're a poet, a novelist, a professor of English, and here on the shortlist as a translator. What's the mood like?
Gung-ho, really feel good. I'm so happy to be on this shortlist. I'm sure people are going to be shocked seeing this face on a women's prize shortlist, talking to all of them. I'm very happy for myself, of course, but I'm thrilled for Ambai. Ambai deserves to be on every literary award shortlist, as far as I'm concerned. A wonderful writer, and and someone whose, I think, work is significant in terms of world literature. I wish she were better known around the world, all right, and I wish she was even better known and better appreciated around the country. And this prize is wow, to be on the shortlist.
So how was the whole experience of translating a redneck dream bird?
Ambai is a friend. She's been someone I admired. So it's very odd to say friend and just leave it at that. Someone whose work I've admired for a very long time, and we've known each other for a long time. And I've never ever dared to tell her that I would like to translate her work. I've taught translation for quite some time. I've translated short pieces all the time for the students and for myself, poems, and published here and there, short stories and poems, but nothing more than that. And when I saw this collection, and Ambai asked me what I thought of it, etc., and she sent me a copy. And it took me a while to get back to her saying, really love it, because I wanted to give time to each story before I reacted to her, because she's very thorough. She'd actually asked me what I liked, what I didn't like, what worked and what didn't work. So I said I need to be prepared to talk to her. And she said, that she'd like me to translate the book if, I was so keen about it, because I've talked about translation so often otherwise. And I said, yes, of course, I'd love to translate this. And translating it was a very interesting experience, because I'm dealing with someone whose work I admire, whose words I want to carry across into English as much as possible, whose stories I don't want to play around with. I don't want to do theoretical stuff and make myself prominent. I don't want to do anything of that kind. And she's also a translator, so she understands the role of the translator. She understands the significance of the translator's work in that sense also. And her English is very good, so she would read every word I wrote. And it became, I think, interesting conversation. I wish we'd recorded them, because I would say, this is what you've written. And she would say, no, it is what you have written, not what I've written. And we chat about it, about what she meant to say. And sometimes I would give up and say, you're the writer, you know what you've done. And she says, no, you're the translator. You have every right. And I said, no, I have every right as a reader. Right. And so we got this role, that reader, and a reader who's responding to her works, but a translator who's trying to take her words across, not the reader's own interpretation, which I would have with somebody who's not around. I would have it would have been my interpretation, my ideas, right? So in this case, I don't think Ambai can get away with saying that it is not her story, or it is not something that she done, because we discussed every word. And the thing about her, therefore, because as writer, as a very conscientious writer, she conceded at that quite often. And she'd say, okay, I think that is what it is, including saying, oh, maybe I should not have used that word, or maybe I should not have used that expression. Now that you point it out to me, that's interesting.
I think you've really brought out her personality, her warmth, that you get to see in person when you're with her. You brought it out very well in what you just described, how you worked with her.
It was fun. As I said, she's extremely warm. As most writers, obviously, she's also very protective of her own work, which is normal, which is why a lot of the discussion took place in the way they did, because here, it's like, what was interesting was two friends discussing her work, one person's work, really, because ultimately, though it was about my translation, ultimately it was about her stories. And she had to, as I said, she had to be graceful, gracious, accept my translation, when it finally took shape after all this, and to say, all right, yours, Prasad, with the idea within brackets, but of course mine. So as if she can't get away with saying just Prasad's because it's also hers. And I think ultimately the fact that on the shortlist, and I'm talking as a translator, I'm only talking as a translator. It's in the book is in the shortlist because they are very powerful stories, and they're wonderful stories by a master storyteller. And as I said, she deserves to be on every list. It just so happens I was a translator. It could have been anybody else, but they are Ambai's stories.
Okay. There's music, there's myth, there's love in all its forms. And, Ambai's concern for women's situation, that's very well known. So if you had to pick like one story among all the 13 and say, this is the one that I feel is etched in my heart and, it's never going to leave me. Which one would that?
Can I answer that last? Because, you started me off and you said there's music. That's one of the things about translating Ambai. Her world is tantalizingly close to mine, right? She's also spent some time in Jawaharlal Nehru University where I taught for 40 years, but we were never contemporaries in that sense. She was there before me, but as a student. But, and the area, places she talks about, the experience she talks about, very experiences I know I've been through, the emergency, the references 1984, many of us have been through, younger people won't know this. But it's also quite different, her world, because her world of Carnatic music is not my world. Her world of certain kind of referentiality was quite alien to me, different and intriguing. And I'm not a Mumbaiker, so I don't know Mumbai at all. So to translate all that, to get that rootedness that she has in all this across in English, needed work, needed research, needed to, interesting conversations with her. But more than that, as simply research, simply to find out what does it mean when you talk about a local line in Mumbai. Where does it go? What are the stations? What does that mean? What does a reference to that place mean? What is that in the social geography of Mumbai? What is that place? To know all that took time for me because I didn't dare translate and show anything to her till I got all that in my head, right? Ragam, which Ragam? What does that Ragam sound like? So I used to listen to them, right? And to understand what's the mood that she's trying to create. What is that? So that was the tough bit. So I just want to add that. It was not simply discussing with her. It was not simply being a reader and, simply being a reader, I just read and enjoyed it. But to translate, you need to get into all that. In terms of stories, I ended up feeling like any writer, which means that, I love all of them. But I thought about it a bit when you asked me, I was talking to you right now, I was thinking about which story. I would say, if I have a favorite, and it's only a favorite because it's almost like a firstborn, because it's the first story that I translated of her, Falling. If and we had we talked a lot about even the title of that story, Falling, and whether it works as the fall or it works as falling, what do we want to say there? And I love that. I loved that because I did that first, and it had a huge impact on me. It's a story, but all these stories had huge impacts on me, right? I mean, huge impact on me because they're so emotional. They're all about love and love at various stages of life. So it's something that gets to you. You read, you need to pause after every story and kind of then settle. If you think of the story I had fun translating, which is a different question, it would be the science fiction story, which was unexpected and quite fun to translate.
Did you have any particular word that two of you that comes to your mind where the two of you said had differences? And
there's so many, so nothing. So many. And here I would say, the thing of Vinagari translating Ambai is among everything else, and I think this will be true of many writers in this country. There are so many languages that impinge on the language you're writing in. So she may be writing in Tamil, but there's Marathi, there's Hindi, there's a Gujarati that's available in Mumbai, there's Tamil, there's Kannada, all kinds of languages are in her Tamil, right?
Yes.
And there's a Telugu of the Carnatic music, there is, it's everything's in her Tamil. So when I'm looking at that, I mean, I have to actually try and get the same multicultural, multilingual word into the translation. So a lot of words we talked about, a lot of words we disagreed on, a lot of words she felt I should not retain, and I felt I should retain. Things are that kind. And even there are in her work in Tamil, there are translations, obviously, because all these languages into genre. She's translating Hindi film songs, she's translating English songs, she's translating poems, she's translating a lot of stuff into Tamil. And in certain cases, it was, if it's from English and the English was well known, you just use the English. But when it's not from the English, and she has sometimes used an English translation given to her by somebody to translate to Tamil, and I didn't like that English translation, I would actually be translating all the time, right? So it's like I'm sitting with the Hindi song and a Tamil version and then giving an English version, right? So that would be still, obviously, she would say, but that is not what I was translating. And I would say, but that is what you ought to have translated. Yeah. Because I don't agree with the translation there. Yeah. So it was interesting. I mean, it was fun. And she agreed with me almost all the time that, okay, yours is better. Yeah, translation is like a very, very, very difficult and it's a different task altogether. It's like... It is, as other translators will also would say this, because especially in our country, people say, it's one of the bundy things people say is you're translating into English in our country, and all that, let's leave that all alone. But the point really is, what should your English be like? Because what is the original language like? This is what I'm saying. People keep thinking the original language is a pure language. It is not a pure language. So when you're writing in Tamil, sitting in a city or even in a small town, anywhere, there are other languages, other dialects, all kinds of things, social lex, all kinds of things which are coming into your text. So to get that complexity across is the challenge for any translator. Yeah, I agree. Can you read something so that it's exemplified what you just said? Something from the original and the same thing in English. I'll do that, but this was just a random pick. So it's not illustrate anything that I've said or anything, but I've just picked up a passage just about 2 minutes before we started. Okay. Right? This is from the story. In Tamil, it's called Sambal Melirum Nagaram, the city that rises from ashes, right? Kammu பேசுவதை நிறுத்திவிட்டு பாத்திரம் கழுவ முற்பட்டிருந்தாள். எதையோ முணுமுணுத்தபடி உற்று கேட்கும் போது அது மும்பைசா லாவணியின் வரிகள். நெருப்பை தின்று சாம்பலை கழிப்பவர்கள் நாங்கள் என்று இரங்காவாசிகள் கூறும் கவிதை. இது தேவர்களின் சிற்பி விஸ்வகர்மா எழுப்பிய நகரம் அல்ல, நெருப்பிலிருந்து தப்பித்த அசுரர்களின் சிற்பி மயன் எழுப்பியது. நகரங்கள் எழ மனங்களும் வனம்சார் வாழ்க்கையும் எரிக்கப்படுவதுதான் புராண கதை. கண்டவ பிரஸ்தம் நெருப்பில் அழிந்த பிறகு தான் எழும்பியது இந்திரபிரஸ்தம். நாகர்களின் வீடாகவும் எண்ணற்ற பறவைகள் மிருகங்கள் இவற்றின் குடியிருப்பாகவும் இருந்த அதுதான் தீக்கிரையாக்கப்பட்டது. வயல்வெளிகள், பழந்தோப்புகள், பூந்தோட்டங்கள், நகரம் இவை வனங்களை அழித்தாதான் உருவாகும். அதுதான் தர்மருக்கு கிருஷ்ணர் சொன்ன பதில். I'll just stop there and read the English. All right. If you want, I can read that later on. Kammu had stopped talking and begun to wash dishes, humming something. When she listened closely, she realized they were lines from the Mumbai Chil Lavani. The poem with the lines, "We are the ones who eat fire and excrete ashes," spoken by Girangaon dwellers. This is not the city raised by Vishwakarma, the architect of the Devas. It was raised by the architect of the Asuras, who escaped from the fire, Mayan. The raising of forests and their lives for the raising of cities was the story of the Puranas. It was after Khandava Prastha was raised in a fire that Indraprastha came up. the home of the Nagas, the tribal people, one which housed various birds and animals. It was turned into ashes. Fields, orchards, flower gardens, cities, all come into being only when forests are destroyed. This was the answer given to Dharma by Krishna. The next paragraph, which I wanted to read, I'll just finish reading that in Tamil first. Nagar, yeah. நெய் சாப்பிட்டு கொழுந்திருந்த அக்னி தன் உடல் கரைந்து பொலிவு பெற வனத்தை அழிப்பது தான் வழி என்று நினைத்து தன் நெருப்பு நாவுகளால் தின்ற வனம் தான் கண்டவ பிரஸ்தம். எல்லாம் எல்லாம் அழிந்தன. மான்கள், சிங்கங்கள், பாம்புகள், குரங்குகள், ஆமைகள், புறாக்கள், கிளிகள், தேனீக்கள், சாரி சாரியாக போன எறும்புகள், மரங்கள், புதர்கள், கொடிகள், மூலிகை செடிகள், புல், பூண்டு எதுவும் ஏஞ்சவில்லை. இந்திரபஸ்தம் எழும்பியது. ஓவியம், இசை மற்றும் நடனம் கற்ற கலைஞர்களும் கைவினை கலைஞர்களும் வியாபாரிகளும் தொழிலாளிகளும் வந்து குழுமினர். English. Agni, which had fattened on ghee, thought that the only way to regain its form and glow was to devour the forest, and it was Kandava Prastha that it had finished with its tongues of fire. Everything was destroyed. Deer, lions, snakes, monkeys, tortoise, pigeons, parrots, bees, the ants who moved in lines, trees, bushes, creepers, herbs, grass, weeds, nothing survived. Indraprastha came up. Soon it was teeming with artists who had learned in painting, music, and dance, teeming with craftspeople, traders, and workers. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was so good to hear the original and then the English, original and then the English. You know, it's like I'm a Malayali, so I could catch a lot of the Tamil.
I'm sure you did.
Right out. Thank you so much, Prasad, for
Thank you. It was a
being
pleasure
part
to
of
hear
this.
and a pleasure to represent Mumbai.
Selma Carvalho, you are an award-winning writer who has mainly written non-fiction, short fiction, and poetry. So how does it feel to have your very first novel go places?
Oh God, it's really, really overwhelming because, you know, I've been shortlisted for numerous short stories, but this is like my first full-length work, which has been, you know, acknowledged in this way. And you don't want to be that writer that depends on external validation to validate your work, but let me tell you, it feels very good when it comes. Yes, it feels marvelous.
In very lyrical prose, you bring strands of belonging and yet not belonging, and abandonment, and this sort of sisterhood.
Right.
So would you like to elaborate a bit on the sisterhood part?
Yeah, you know, the title of the story actually emerged long before the novel reached any sort of conclusion or direction, and it comes from that line in the book, which is, "We belong to the sisterhood of swans, hoping to mate for life, but our species is doomed to disappointment." So, I mean, I don't want to speak to the universality of women. Each woman is individual and she has her own desires, but by and large, there's a kind of specificity to female desire. We, you know, in the course of our lives, so many things are going to happen to us biologically. We're going to menstruate, we're going to go through menopause and miscarriage maybe, and give birth, and all of those, I think they go in large part to determine the decisions we take about our sexual lives. And I think because of it, there are certain decisions we take, and we still seek to find fulfillment within sexual relationships. And the second part of that sentence, our species is doomed to disappointment, is the more telling sentence about the condition, because juxtaposed against our needs, perhaps, is the reality of monogamy, which is very fraught tension. It's a very complicated and complex affair, monogamy or long-term partnership. So that is the struggle and the unresolved issue. And then the subplot of the book, of course, is the sisterhood we find amongst women, the very self-sustaining sisterhood of mothers and sisters and friends, which is so essential to female lives. So that is the sisterhood of swans.
And I like that, as we age, we discover different aspects of this sisterhood.
Yes, very true, very true.
And it gets more passionate, it gets more intense, and in fact, all our platonic ties become of paramount importance.
Very much.
Finding the one, the soulmate, the twin flame, which we are fed all the time as we are growing up. Though we can see the marriages around us and we know that's perhaps not true, but
there's the hope, the eternal hope. And also I think there's a growth in Anna Marie's character, which is in youth, she tends to be disloyal to the sisterhood, and she's a bit treacherous, stealing her best friend's boyfriend and things like that. But as she matures, she sees the very life-affirming value of her friendship with Sujata. So, yeah.
A lot of fiction focuses on the family because it's like the smallest battlefield.
Yes.
Any one of us can belong to, or we have no choice over belonging to that particular crucible. And a lot of literature looks at the same gender relationship within the family, like fathers and sons, and mothers and daughters. So what I wanted to ask you is there some kind of, I know you don't want to generalize or universalize, every woman is different, like you said, but is there like a kind of repetitive pattern or echo in mother-daughter relationships?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this now. I can't say with certainty that there is an echo, but I think the mother-daughter relationship is just one of those very, very close relationships you're bound to encounter amongst human bonding. And there is a kind of a mirror, because we're each other's biological companions. We're going to go through the same processes, and we're also each other's emotional companions. At some point, we're going to go through the same emotional crises. And very often the repetitiveness are the many betrayals which feel so similar and so familiar, from mothers' lives to grandmothers' lives to daughters' lives. And so for me, examining this, because I'm in the middle, I have a mother with whom I shared a very close relationship. She's still with us. And my daughter, with whom I share a very close relationship as well. And for me, examining these relationships is very essential to my writing. But then, of course, being a writer, you're examining every relationship. You're examining your relationship, your sexual relationships, and your relationships with your partners, with your father, and but there is something unique and very specific to the mother-daughter relationship, which I think will keep female writers spellbound for a very long time.
One of the things I remember, there's a movie called Wild, which is based on, I think, a book called Wild,
Right.
where the daughter tells the mother, because mother's also doing her studies along with the daughter, at a
Right.
later stage after some amount of domestic abuse and separation from the husband. And she's, the daughter's quite embarrassed by the mother.
Right.
And then she says that you're not smart, like something like you're stupid and inferior. I don't remember verbatim. And the mother says, but that's the plan. Daughters are supposed to overtake you in the smarts.
Yes.
Department of smarts, so
Yes.
that's how it is supposed to be.
Yes, and I've just finished the first draft of another novel where I very deeply explored this relationship between a mother and a daughter, with the protagonist being in the middle. And there's a certain line that I have there, which is, at some point in your life, you can't extend neither backwards in your relationship with your mother, nor can you extend forward. And so you outgrow that relationship to some extent. But you're extending forward with your daughter. So the continuity. And of course, we're supposed to go further than our mothers. And our daughters are supposed to go further than us. That's the natural order of things, hopefully, all things considered. But I think one of the things that my book, A Sisterhood, explores is not necessarily are the lives of our daughters moving forward progressively. There's so much loss of agency being a woman. Even, the dichotomy of our human relationships is as soon as we acquire some amount of autonomy and liberation, somehow at the same time that is manipulated, and we're also made to simultaneously suffer a loss of agency. So I don't want to go into it with examples, but particularly sexual agency, there's just such a loss of it within womanhood, in every generation.
Yeah, I think agency over your own body,
yes,
self, and sometimes your ambitions, the way you are,
yes,
you're just shaped
yeah.
along other people's expectations. Selma, I think we'll go into your reading now.
Sure. I've chosen a very brief passage because I'm not one of those great readers. So I'm going to keep it brief. This is the first time the protagonist sleeps with her lover. And within the course of this, she discovers that he is in fact married. So I watched Sanjay sleeping in the airless room. His left hand is upright, the fingers curved into a stiff claw. If I'd known him better, I'd know what the claw meant. Long-time lovers are privileged. They know how to decode somnambulatory desires. For itinerant lovers, nights are for hunting under a moon that's yellowed on trails hanging in hollows of hills. Nights are for prizing the self from the shadow. Sagged over a velveteen blanket, sleeping on sunless streams, bald fetal, cracked toes curling, railed in by Sanjay's arm, I recoil. Definitions construct on lilac linen sheets. Frames too small to fit into frameworks of womanhood. I want, I desire, I am vulnerable, I am lonely, I am girl, I am kite flying, I am leaf falling, I am fish swimming, I am fowl flouncing, I am fool faking, I am woman floundering, I am all things at all times, I am many things with many needs. Thank you.
It was lovely. I'm a kite flying, I'm a leaf falling. Nice,
There's so many things. A woman is a particularly nuanced creature. We have so many layers to us, and many of them paradoxical and existing in paradox.
Selma, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
And thank you so much for such a lyrical title.
Thank you.
it's such a lovely poem of a title, actually. Thank you, Selma.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Hi, Kripa. You write nonfiction, short and long fiction, and you're no stranger to long lists. So, what did this short list do to you?
First of all, it's very special because it's the first shortlist the book has got. So that one is, I'm going to remember this for the rest of my life. But also to be on the shortlist with the likes of Ambai, and that's, I was really stunned. And like I told you before, I think this is very, very meaningful to me. And thank you for doing something so meaningful for literature in India. I think this is what was needed. You've magically filled that gap, that was there. So.
Thank you. The idea of, trauma traveling down generations, and Yamuna has all those secrets from the past. Do you think, at the risk of sounding sexist in a different way, do you think that genetic pain could be perhaps a gender thing?
So the book itself, as you rightly got it, the book itself is about inheritance, and so what we are inheriting, and it's also about the decisions you can make with whatever inheritance that you're being given, right? So I don't think it's just women who inherit this, but I do feel like it's there's already too many restrictions on us within the institutions that are there to uphold our every move. And so for women, it's I don't even know how to call this. I think for all the women who've read this, they're like, even the men who've read this, they're like, this reminds me of my grandmother. Nobody said this reminds me of me. This reminds me of my grandmother and some of the women in my family. And so I think there is a certain understanding there that this is so this is a very common thing across a particular class and caste, for women to experience, and that is, and I think that is what I'm trying to understand as well, even through this book. Why is it that we feel this so much more than the boys do? What are we doing wrong, or what are they doing right, or what is the society doing to them that it's not doing to us, or vice versa? That is what I think I was trying to understand through the book.
Actually, the part about the menstrual isolation, and it was there in a recent Malayalam movie, The Great Indian Kitchen. And, and I like the way in the book and in the movie, they kind of get around it, whatever the time period, that, this is something not so, not to be adjusted to, whatever the time frame. I just want to ask you about the crafting a bit, because it's one of those books which takes the past and the present. And therefore, the people from that generation, this generation, middle generation, etc., you have your train journey, your love letter, joint family politics, and as I said, this whole menstrual period isolation that happens. So, can you perhaps share a bit about the crafting, and also the humor?
Right, thank you. So for me, in fact, the voice of Yamuna, the narrator in the novel, was the voice that just came to me as I sat down to write the novel, and so I just went with it. But I knew what I wanted as many women's voices to be heard directly, and so I went around looking for how do I make this believable? How can I let so many women speak without it getting too crowded, and without it looking like I've just put together a bunch of voice is just speaking. And nothing wrong with it, but I just felt like I'd like to spend some more time, on how she goes about uncovering the story. It's almost as if she's looking for a mystery, right? And so she gets one. You get what you're looking for, and so so then I thought, okay, maybe a letter, because there is, there are these lazy afternoons where you'd see your mother poring over some old correspondence and saying, this uncle used to write like this back in the day, my grandmother wrote to my, so that sort of was playing in my mind. And so when I thought, okay, this is a bit realistic, right? And another inspiration for me was, of course, Jane Austen. I'm a huge fan of her work, but I also have read the letters that she and her sister exchanged with each other. It's like a little peek into that era, and they're talking about real people, and you can see the influences that are creeping into Austen's work. And so for me, this was also a way of paying tribute to my hero, and to sort of saying that there are little tributes that are hidden within this the letters themselves. The ways in which Austen speaks to her sister and her sister speaks to, those are all woven into the letters. So I had fun doing that. As for the humor, I think that is the thing that really sort of stood out for me. The women who've been through the most were also some of the funniest in that I knew. I think that humor sort of comes from being able to say, I've seen so much worse than this, and every time something horrible comes up, and it also speaks of the character of the women, who sort of really, the kind of things I would hear about them in my own family, and then the kind of person that I knew, like I just could not reconcile the two at all. And so I felt like this book also needed a touch of humor so that it doesn't become so weepy, and people don't feel like these are just it's just like a pity party, it's just one of the ways for me to make them strong is for them to be able to laugh and for them to be able to crack jokes, because that itself is power.
That is, yes, definitely. I think when women of any age are grouped together, one of the things is humor and the other is sex, and humor about sex becomes, I think, one of the most rampant themes of the talks. Kripa, would you do a short reading?
Oh, yes. I'd love to. Thank you for the opportunity. I haven't had much of a chance since the book came out.
I know, COVID and all. Yeah.
Westland possibly shutting down. So I'm all the more grateful for this chance to read. This is from a chapter called Tata's Tale of Subbu. This is the protagonist's grandfather describing his wife. She was a distant cousin, so no, it was not love at first sight. Her great uncle introduced me to the audience when I went to Chengalpattu to give a concert. I saw her in the crowd. Her smile. It started from her curving lips and spread until her eyes lit up. Her cheeks, they looked as if she had stuffed 2 big laddus in them when she smiled. I knew her, of her, for long, from the time she was born, actually. And I met her in Madras, and we'd even watched a movie together already, remember? This was a month or so before that. Subbu had rebelliously curly hair that she tried to rein in with oil. She was broad-shouldered, big-made, beautiful, and had presence. It was hard to ignore her. When we spoke about that day later, yes, we did speak about it, she remembered what I wore and what she thought of me. She said I was handsome, but not handsome like the boys of her village, the ones who had toned upper bodies and played badminton. She too played badminton, until our wedding, wearing long pavadas. I was shocked by how bold she was. This was before we even got married. She told me I was handsome in a way that made me seem rich. I wasn't. Discontinuing school at 14, I'd run away from home and joined a cinema company. I watched her from the stage as I sang, and she fidgeted because she knew I was looking. She was no delicate damsel, your grandmother. It sounds silly saying this now, but at that time, Subbu was the only unmarried 14-year-old in the entire family. Some girls her age were pregnant. Subbu was the one who convinced her father to send Lalita to school even after she came of age. That's what her father said. It doesn't dawn when a hen crows, no. It only dawns when the rooster crows. So why should these hens want to strut around in schools? But all the men in that house did was fatten up like goats ahead of Eid, while the women cooked and cleaned and sewed and worked. So all the men went to school, but the women of the house, none of them did. Despite feeling that way, her father sent Lalita to school because Subbu had asked him of it. That day, the concert went on until 7 in the evening, but she had to be home before sunset. When I went back to her house, she came running to the courtyard and offered water to wash my feet. When her father turned around to go into the other room and there was no one but us, I took the rose garland that was given to me at the concert and handed it to her. She ran into the kitchen, not before snatching the garland from my hand. Subbu is why I found success, and she's certainly why Lalita found success. She was our coach. She was a happy, selfless, joyous woman, devout, sharp, duty-bound. She ruled our lives like an empress. You know how some people arrive fully made, as if they're grand old souls? She was like that. Your mother used to joke that Subbu sat in her chair the way Queen Victoria does on her throne. While on her deathbed at the hospital, a nurse tried to chat Subbu up and asked her, "Auntie, what's your name?" And Subbu smiled, "Victoria."
She's so lovable because she has broad shoulders and she's not delicate.
yeah.
Too many heroines are, so slight. Yeah. You can't see them if they're standing in a particular angle. That slender. Yeah. She's so flesh and blood and so real. And thank you for the reading. Thank you for being with us. And I must tell you that the title of your book is so tantalizing.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It was actually
like you said, it's a mystery. So even the title itself is like such a whodunit.
Yeah.
What you know about her. And it's a title that is mood based. I mean, whatever mood you are in, you can read it like that.
Yeah. It's also a very funny title because some people who didn't like the book said, "What we know about her, nothing." I found that so hilarious. I was telling my editor.
No, but it's inviting, what we know about her.
Yeah,
so find out more. So it's very, like I said, it's a very pick me up, who done it kind of a thing.
Yeah. There's also somebody told me that I should have a sequel and call it What We Know About Him. I was like, that's a great idea.
Actually, I agree. And that will be read in a different tone, What We Know About Him. Thank you so much, Kripa. Thank you so much, and all the best for the book. Thank you. So Nahid, this is your first novel and it's on a shortlist. How cool is that?
Very cool, definitely. Awesome. Second shortlist actually for me. I mean, I've been really lucky. Yeah.
So how does it feel? Be on so many shortlists with your first book.
I think that, it really takes a village to write any kind of novel. And, my name's on the cover, but, I couldn't have gotten here definitely without my Indian editor at HarperCollins, who was so instrumental in shaping the book. And, he's made it what it is right now. And the trust that HarperCollins put in me as a debut author, as somebody who doesn't have a huge amount of bylines and stuff to publish me. So I really am I'm standing on the shoulders of many people here. So, I'm very aware of that.
And it's so sweet of you to thank your editor, because I think editors do so much of housekeeping, in the literary field, but they're unsung heroes. Nobody really remembers them in the end.
Yeah, and I think that books wouldn't exist without them. So definitely they should be sung heroes.
I know you have scenes of rain in your book, but I just wanted to tell you that the title is what can I say? The title is almost a song by itself. And you just read the title. For a long time, I have not even seen the book, but I would see the title, and you could hear raindrops. It's that kind of a title, In your novel, Numi Vadia, she finds love, but not happiness. And in the context of your book, how is this not synonymous? And in the context of the general world too, we find that it is not synonymous. So why is that?
Well, in the context of the book, I think that for Numi, love comes at the cost of conformity. So unfortunately, for her to be able to participate in like a traditional or like a contemporary marriage means that she has to kind of bow down and kind of follow certain rules that she's always chafed under. So we see a moment where she kind of breaks free of like this small patriarchal town, and she tries to kind of chart her own way and become a journalist and stuff. But when she meets her love interest and she gets married, and then she's kind of pulled back into all of that because for her it's all entangled. So she does find love, but she doesn't find happiness. And I think it's very kind of because of her particular set of circumstances in the novel.
I was reminded of this saying that you can have a happy childhood, but you need not be a happy child.
Oh, yeah, I guess so. Possibly, yeah.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, you were saying something?
I said possibly, yes.
Yeah, it's sad, but yeah, true. So it's the same thing in the case of love. I mean, you bring so many expectations, but then you're also bringing in your
baggage.
Yeah, your baggage, and can go anyway, actually. And because the other party is also bringing his baggage. And it's like, it's a marriage of two baggages.
Yeah, Numi very much, when it comes to the whole love angle for Numi, I think for her, she views love as a kind of like a resolution of her problems, and it's going to take her away. And she has this kind of, and she's not done the homework. Like she's not like, as you said, she's bringing in a lot of baggage because of her particulars, what has happened to her. And she's done nothing to mitigate that or change that. And she's expecting it all to miraculously go away because she's fallen in love or someone is, she wants that validation. But she's not, a relationship is so much more than just like two people admiring each other, right? Being mirrors for each other. So I think she kind of wakes up to that quickly.
Self-destruction is almost an inheritance in your story from mother to daughter. In such relationships, in such close family ties, do you think it's a given that history would repeat itself?
I'm not I think a therapist would be able to kind of really answer this question with authority. I can speak personally that I'm really interested in complicated mother and daughter, and I think we've just kind of hit the tip of the iceberg of this genre of relationships, or this kind of the mother wound, as I like to say. And I'm really intrigued and interested. Like I just watched The Lost Daughter, which is an adaptation of Elena Ferrante novel. And like I just it really fascinates me. And I think that this relationship in the book was born out of this fascination to explore this, because I feel like we've just kind of started talking about it and there's so much to talk about. But I hope it doesn't bear repeating, but like I think there's a way to break that generational curse of the mother-daughter trauma, generational trauma that's passed down. I don't think that in this book, Nuvi really succeeds in breaking that. I don't know. We leave it at a point where we really don't know what's going to happen in the future, right?
She's hoping she will not bring that to her own child.
Yeah. And I think that as parents, like that's the best we can do. Like to start off, it is not bring our own baggage, our own trauma, and pass it down as an inheritance to our children, right?
Yeah.
One hopes.
Yeah. There's a Turkish film. Have you watched that? A Mother's Wound.
No, I haven't, but I'm definitely going to watch it because I can't get enough of this, the mother wound at this
Yeah,
moment.
but
It's
that is the
fascinating.
gender, it's a mother and son rather than a mother and
Oh,
daughter. But yes, it talks about when you suppress things or you put a pleasant face over things, then the whole trauma that happens to the person, when you have to keep up appearances and the price you pay for that from inside.
yeah, and I think that this form, like, this is you might find this a little silly, but have you the movie, the Disney movie Encanto? Like,
Yes, I loved it.
and that also, like, I love that movie because it kind of simplifies. It's also about generational trauma, right? And it's about like the grandmother's trauma. She's bringing that and
Yes.
passing it down to her children, and it's wonderful that they could explain that in a way that even kids would, get it. And I think that I love that movie because the Disney villain is literally generational trauma. There's no other villain, there's no other bad guy in that movie, and I think that's incredible. So yeah, I think that, like I said, like I think if we've just started talking about this really in a mainstream comprehensive kind of way. So I'm excited about it.
Thanks to writers like you, I think, like you said, it's a tip of the iceberg. But then now I think more people are going to look at this and see what they can add to this whole narrative of mutual destruction, let's call it. If allowed to fester, if allowed, if it's not allowed hearing, if it's not brought out, then the healing is not going to start. We have to first talk about it, and then it comes out, and the wound gets healed.
Yeah, I think that in writing the book, I really hoped it was not a comfortable book to write.
I'm sure.
I can empathize. It is also at times not a comfortable book to read, but I think without that discomfort, you're not going to really start. To be cliche, like get out of your comfort zone and talk about things or bring up things which naturally in the course of your day you may not want to kind of dwell on or think about. So I definitely kind of try to go there with the novel.
Yeah. And I think before I saw the novel, Kanishk, your agent, Kanishk Gupta, was really raving about the book and telling me you have to read it much before I saw the book.
Yeah, Kanishka was a huge early champion. Like I said, it takes a village. So Kanishka, signed me on, and he was very, very enthusiastic about the book. Then of course, he connected to me to my editor, who was again it takes a lot of people to kind of bring a book to the attention of readers, and it's really not just a one person thing. Like you might write a manuscript, but a manuscript is not a book.
And they're also your first readers.
Exactly.
Before you come to your real readers, they are like your first primary feedback people.
Exactly.
Nahi, would you like to read for us?
Sure. So I have a brief. Okay, so I'm going to read from the middle of the book, and this is when Numi is Numi's preparing to be married, and this is a scene with her grandmother, who she has a very special relationship with her grandmother. A month before Veer and I were married under a pavilion set in my grandparents' garden, Lily Mama and I sat together on the veranda on a winter afternoon, the sunshine sweet and soft, and pored over a goldsmith sketch for my wedding necklace, a gift from my grandparents. I held a stone the size of my pinky nail up to the light. It was full of green fire. I brought it closer to my eye. Remember, Lily Mama scolded, emeralds are brittle stones. They crack easily. Where did you get these? I asked, setting the emerald down gently on the blue velvet cloth. They were my mother's, Lily Mama smiled. I set them aside for your wedding on the day you were born. Love squeezed my heart. Lily Mama was good at hiding how much she cared for me. From our sofa on the veranda, Lily Mama and I looked out at the garden in comfortable silence. A green bird, the size of a ping pong ball with opalescent wings and a ruler-straight tail, landed on the terracotta bird bath by the rose bushes, admired its reflection for a moment, and then flew off. Oof, this new gardener has vowed to ruin my roses, Lily Mama said. She trundled off into the lawn, barking orders at the gardener in her broken, mangled Hindi, looking pure in the yellow morning sunshine, like a fat, gracious angel. A greater cuckoo, a crow present, hopped onto the lawn, copper wings burnished in the sunlight. Its eyes were tiny red flames in its oil black head. It took off as I approached, letting out a whoop, whoop, whoop. In remote parts of the country, like the village Shantabai grew up in, the cuckoo's call was a bad omen, but I'd always thought of it as a sign of good luck.
Nice. And I like that whole the whole emerald thing. And I was thinking it's not just memories and trauma and pain that gets passed on. Sometimes it's precious stones.
Yeah. And
Which is-
I picked this section because there's a lot said about the harder parts of the book, but I think there are these very beautiful moments also of just description and memory and love, like real love. And
garden and birds and sunshine.
Yeah, garden and birds and sunshine. So yeah, I think that I've always loved poetry, and I really wanted to bring a sense of rhythm and cadence to my sentences, and I tried really hard. It wasn't always easy, but hopefully I've succeeded somewhat in putting my vision down on the page.
But like you said, these kind of books where there's a lot of authenticity and a lot of honesties, maybe not personal, but what you've observed, and you're bringing it to this one story that you're telling. I think that is, like you said, a very traumatic thing to do. It's a very painful thing to set it all down and to know what comes after what. The whole crafting thing is also very, very fraught with doubt, self-doubt, and have you given too much away too early? When do you come up with this? Because there's so much drama, there's so much suspense between when it comes to telling of blood ties, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a very conscious decision from the start for me to not kind of put my hand on the scale for any one character. Including my protagonist. So I did not want to prime my reader to like or dislike. I kind of just wanted to write it all down and let them come to their own judgments and conclusions. And I felt like that was the most honest way to write these characters. Because it's very easy to manipulate one's reader into having sympathy for X character or Y character. Just add a couple of things here or there, but that's not the decisions I wanted to make in this particular novel.
And also, I think as writers find out when they bring in characters or give life to characters like this, is that characters have their own say sometimes. They don't always obey, do the thing that you think they will do. I mean, the first person they surprise is you, and they don't do what you ask them to do, right?
Yeah.
All the best. And
thank you
so much for joining us.